The stellar research vessel Axiom hadn't been designed for combat. That much was obvious from the way its sleek hull now resembled a piece of crumpled aluminum foil, trailing sparks and plasma as it pierced Earth's atmosphere. First Science Officer Nexera gripped her control panel, all four of her arms working in concert to maintain what little stability remained in their descent. "Status report," she barked, her crystalline skin reflecting the emergency lights that bathed the bridge in crimson. "Primary drive offline. Secondary systems at 12%. Hull integrity." Navigator Zen paused, his tendrils writhing in distress. "Let's just say we're lucky we're in one piece, Commander." Nexera knew their encounter with the Drachnid pirates had left them with few options. The Axiom's mission to study primitive worlds had taken an unexpected turn when they'd stumbled upon an illegal mining operation. Now, they were about to make an emergency landing on one of those very primitive worlds they'd been meant to observe from a safe distance. "There," Zen announced, gesturing with a tendril toward their sensors, "a large collection of metallic materials. Primitive, but it might provide us with enough raw resources for repairs." The landing was more of a controlled crash, sending decades' worth of carefully sorted scrap metal cascading around them as the Axiom plowed through what appeared to be organized piles of machinery. When the dust settled, Nexera took stock of their situation through the main viewport. They had landed in what the humans would call a scrapyard, though to Nexera's people, the luminary, such a collection of unsorted technology would be considered barbaric. Rows of damaged ground vehicles stretched into the distance, stacked like building blocks beneath an orange sunset sky. The air was thick with the scent of oxidized metal and petroleum products. "Life signs approaching," Zen reported, his voice tight. "Multiple humans." Before Nexera could respond, a ground vehicle approached through the maze of scrap. It was primitive. 4 wheels, internal combustion engine, minimal safety features, but it moved with purpose. Behind it came several more vehicles, and walking alongside them were humans carrying tools and wearing stained protective garments. "Remember," Nexera addressed her crew, "we are scientists. We observe. We do not interfere. We will request basic materials and—" A sharp bang on the hull interrupted her speech. One of the humans, a tall female with dark skin and arms covered in colorful markings, was standing beside their ship with something that appeared to be a scanning device, though far more crude than anything Nexera had seen in centuries. "Hey," the human called out, her voice carrying clearly through the ship's external sensors. "Either you folks come out and talk, or we start assuming you're not friendly. And trust me, you landed in exactly the wrong place to not be friendly." Nexera exchanged looks with her crew. Their mission protocols were clear about contact with primitive species, but their situation was far from normal. After a moment's consideration, she made her decision. "Prepare the universal translator," she ordered. "And Zen, ready the emergency beacon, just in case." The Axiom's main hatch opened with a hiss of hydraulics, releasing a cloud of steam into the evening air. Nexera emerged first, her crystalline form catching the sunset and throwing rainbow patterns across the scattered debris. She heard several humans gasp, but to their credit, none ran away. The tall human with the scanner stepped forward, wiping her hands on her coveralls. "Well," she said, looking Nexera up and down, "you sure ain't from around here. I'm Maya Chen, and this is Chen's Universal Salvage and Repair. You picked a hell of a place to crash land." Nexera straightened to her full height, nearly 9 feet tall. "I am First Science Officer Nexera of the stellar research vessel Axiom. We require assistance." Maya grinned, revealing white teeth that contrasted sharply with her dark skin. "Honey, that much is obvious from what you did to my careful organization system." She gestured at the wreckage around them. "Question is, what makes you think we can help?" "We observe significant technological activity in this location," Nexera explained carefully. "While your technology is primitive by our standards, we hope to acquire raw materials for basic repairs." One of the other humans, a shorter male with gray hair and arms like tree trunks, barked out a laugh. Primitive, huh? That's rich coming from folks who just lawn-darted their fancy spaceship into my cousin's junkyard. Maya held up a hand, silencing him. Now, Uncle Joe. Let's hear them out. She turned back to Nexara, her expression serious but not unkind. Look, I'm guessing you folks didn't choose to land here. Something or someone did a number on your ship. We may not have fancy space tech, but we got 3 generations of engineering knowledge and enough spare parts to build a small city. Nexara felt her crystalline structure vibrate with uncertainty. Their mission protocols were explicit about technological contamination of primitive worlds. And yet, we have limited options, she admitted finally. Our ship's core systems are damaged beyond our ability to repair with our remaining resources. We merely seek basic materials, metals, composites, perhaps some simple tools. Maya's grin widened. Simple tools. Lady, you haven't seen what we can do with simple tools. Uncle Joe there once built a working jet engine from a washing machine motor and some spare air conditioner parts. She took a step closer, looking up at Nexara with keen interest. How about this? You let us take a look at your ship, really look at it, and we'll help you fix it. Fair exchange of knowledge. Zen moved closer to Nexara, his tendrils twitching nervously. Commander, the protocols can be adapted to emergency situations. Nexara finished firmly. She turned back to Maya. Your offer is acceptable, but we must insist on certain limitations regarding technology transfer. Fair enough. Maya nodded. We'll start with the basics. Hey, Tommy. She called out to a young human near one of the vehicles. Get the plasma cutter and the big toolbox. And somebody wake up Raj. We're gonna need his weird math brain for this one. As the humans burst into activity around them, Nexara watched with growing fascination. They moved with a kind of organized chaos, each seeming to know their role without explicit instruction. It was nothing like the rigid hierarchy of luminary society, and yet it seemed to work with remarkable efficiency. One more thing, Maya added, pulling out a small communication device. Whatever did this to your ship, they're likely to come looking. Nexara's crystalline structure darkened slightly, the equivalent of a human frown. It's possible. We encountered pirates in the outer system. Maya's smile turned predatory. Good thing we've got experience with pirates too then. Different kind, maybe, but pirates are pirates. She began typing on her device. I'm calling in some friends. If trouble comes looking for you, they're gonna find a lot more than they bargained for. As the sun set over the scrapyard, Nexara watched the humans begin their work, their excitement palpable. Perhaps, she thought, their primitive status needed some revaluation. After all, any species that could look at a crashed alien spacecraft and see an opportunity rather than a threat might have more to offer than the luminary had initially believed. Dawn broke over Chen's universal salvage and repair, painting the scattered metal in shades of gold and rose. The Axiom's crystalline hull reflected the early morning light in prismatic patterns across the work area that Maya's crew had established overnight. What had started as chaos was slowly transforming into an organized operation. Raj Patel, Maya's resident weird math brain, sat cross-legged on a workbench, surrounded by tablets and paper covered in equations. His dark eyes darted between the alien ship's exposed systems and his calculations, while his hands never stopped moving, writing in a mixture of human mathematics and newly invented symbols to describe the alien technology. It's beautiful, he muttered, as Nexara approached. Your ship's power distribution system. It's like watching a symphony in mathematical form. Nexara's crystalline form shifted colors slightly, indicating curiosity. You can understand our systems. Understand? No, not entirely, Raj admitted, pushing his glasses up his nose. But mathematics is universal. Your power systems follow patterns I recognize, even if the implementation is different. It's like... He paused, searching for an analogy. It's like hearing a familiar melody played on an instrument you've never seen before. A loud clang interrupted their conversation, followed by cursing in 3 different human languages. Uncle Joe emerged from beneath a damaged hull panel, his face streaked with grease and an expression of triumph in his eyes. "Found your problem," he called out, waving a twisted piece of metal. "Your fancy heat dissipation system's got a recursive feedback loop. Must have happened when those pirates hit you. She's been cooking herself from the inside out." Zen's tendrils writhed in agitation. "Impossible. Our thermal regulation systems are triple redundant." "Yeah, well," Joe grunted, pulling himself up. "Sometimes the fancy solution ain't the best solution. You've got so many backups and fail-safes that when something goes wrong, it goes wrong in ways you never expected." Maya walked over, wiping her hands on a rag. "He's right. We see it all the time with high-end cars. So many computer systems trying to fix problems that sometimes they create new ones." She turned to Nexera. "Your ship's beautiful, but she's overthinking things." Nexera processed this, her crystalline structure shifting through patterns of thought. "What do you propose?" "Something simpler," Maya replied. "Something that can't fail because there's nothing to fail." "Uncle Joe." The older man nodded, already heading toward one of the workshop buildings. "I'm thinking that old Stirling engine design we used on the desert racers, modify it with some of their heat-resistant materials." Over the next few hours, Nexera watched in fascination as the humans essentially rebuilt her ship's thermal management system from scratch. They kept the core alien technology, but surrounded it with what they called analog backups, mechanical systems that required no power and couldn't be disrupted by electromagnetic damage. Tani, the youngest of the crew, proved particularly adept at bridging the technological gap. His small hands could reach places the adults couldn't, and he showed an intuitive understanding of how things should fit together, regardless of their origin. "See, the thing about machines," he explained while threading a custom-made coolant line through the ship's infrastructure, "is that they all want to work. Doesn't matter if they're from Earth or wherever you're from. You just gotta listen to what they're telling you." Zen, who had been skeptical of the humans' methods, found himself drawn into their enthusiasm. "The boy speaks truth," he admitted to Nexera during a brief break. "Their solutions are inelegant, but there is a certain brilliance in their simplicity." As the day progressed, more of Maya's friends arrived. A woman named Sarah brought a truck full of specialized equipment she'd built herself. A man called Diego arrived with what he claimed was the world's largest collection of rare earth magnets. Each new arrival added their own expertise to the growing project. The humans worked in shifts, taking breaks only when Maya insisted. During these moments, they shared meals and stories with the alien crew, their initial wariness giving way to genuine curiosity and camaraderie. "You know what's funny?" Maya said during one such break, sharing something she called a tamal with Nexera, who couldn't eat it but appreciated the gesture. "We've been preparing for something like this for years." "Preparing? How so?" Maya gestured around the scrapyard. "All of us here, we're the ones who never stopped believing. Never stopped looking up at the stars and wondering. While the world got more digital, more wireless, more advanced, we kept our hands in the dirt, kept learning how things work at the most basic level." She smiled, watching Tommy and Zen work together on a particularly complex piece of machinery. "Everyone called us old-fashioned, said we were living in the past, keeping all this junk. But we knew something they didn't. The fundamental rules of how things work never change. Whether it's a 1950s tractor or a spaceship, it's all about understanding the basics." Nexera observed the humans working on her ship, seeing them in a new light. Their technology might be primitive, but their understanding was anything but. They approached problems with a creativity and flexibility that her own people had perhaps lost in their pursuit of perfection. "I believe," she said slowly, her crystalline form glowing with revelation, "that we may have been incorrect in our assessment of your species' technological development." "How so?" Maya asked, though her smile suggested she already knew the answer. We measured advancement by complexity, by automation, by removal of direct interaction with machinery. But there is wisdom in maintaining connection with simpler solutions, in understanding the fundamental principles rather than merely the advanced applications. A loud cheer erupted from the work area. The new thermal management system had just come online, its efficiency readings actually exceeding the original specifications. "Hot, Dan," Uncle Joe shouted, his face split in a wide grin. "She's purring like a kitten." But before they could properly celebrate their success, Raj came running from his workbench, his face pale with concern. "Maya, I'm picking up something on the old radio telescope. Multiple objects entering the atmosphere." He paused, swallowing hard. "I don't think your pirate friends are planning to stay away." Maya's expression hardened as she turned to Nexura. "Well, looks like we're about to find out if our repairs hold up under pressure. You up for a fight?" Nexura's crystalline structure pulsed with determination. "We are scientists, not warriors." "Good thing we're neither," Maya replied, already pulling out her phone to make calls. "We're mechanics. And trust me, that's going to come in handy real soon." The sun was setting again, but this time, instead of peace, it brought with it the promise of conflict. Yet as Nexura watched the humans scrambling to prepare, she felt something unexpected: confidence. These remarkable primitive beings had already proven themselves far more capable than anyone could have predicted. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The night sky above Chen's Universal Salvage and Repair had become a stage for an impending confrontation. Raj's jury-rigged early warning system, cobbled together from an old radio telescope, 3 modified satellite dishes, and what he swore was a repurposed microwave, kept tracking the approaching Drachnid vessels. 6 ships, he reported, adjusting his glasses nervously. They're trying to be subtle about their approach, but they're not accounting for atmospheric interference with their cloaking systems. Maya stood in what had become their impromptu command center, a converted shipping container filled with monitors, radio equipment, and enough coffee to fuel an army. How long? 2 hours, maybe less. Nexura's crystalline form pulsed with concern as she studied the crude but effective tracking display. The Drachnid raiders are known for their brutality. They will not simply leave if asked. "Good," came a new voice. Everyone turned to see a woman standing in the doorway, her silver hair tied back in a tight braid. She wore military-style cargo pants and a jacket covered in mysterious pockets. "Because we're not planning to ask." Maya's face broke into a relieved grin. "Everyone, meet Colonel Sarah Martinez, retired. Former Special Forces, current pain in the neck to anyone who thinks they can push around the little guy." The colonel nodded to Nexura. Maya filled me in. "You've got pirates incoming, looking to either capture or destroy your ship. They're expecting to find a damaged vessel and a helpless crew." Her smile turned predatory. "Let's disappoint them." Over the next hour, the scrapyard transformed. What had appeared to be random piles of junk revealed themselves as carefully disguised defensive positions. Local off-road enthusiasts arrived with modified vehicles, their engines quieted and their frames reinforced. Amateur radio operators set up a communication network that, as Tommy proudly explained, even alien tech would have trouble jamming. Uncle Joe led a team in modifying the Actium's newly repaired systems. "See, your ship's got all these fancy weapons," he explained to Zen, "but they're too predictable. Military types, they always expect the high-tech solution. They never see the low-tech sucker punch coming." The modifications they made were ingenious in their simplicity. The ship's energy shields were augmented with a network of salvaged electromagnets, creating an unpredictable field that would play havoc with enemy targeting systems. The thermal management system they'd repaired earlier was reversed, turning it into what Uncle Joe called a real nasty surprise for anyone who gets too close. Colonel Martinez organized the defenders with military precision, but incorporated suggestions from both humans and aliens. R.A.D's calculations helped predict the most likely attack vectors, while Nexera's knowledge of Drachnid tactics proved invaluable. "They'll expect us to run," Nexera observed, her structure shifting thoughtfully. "The Drachnid consider themselves apex predators. They don't anticipate prey that fights back." "Then they've never met humans before," Maya replied, checking the power connections on what appeared to be a modified Tesla coil. "We've got a saying here on Earth: the most dangerous animal is a cornered one." As the preparations continued, Nexera noticed something remarkable about the humans. Despite the imminent danger, they seemed almost excited. There was fear, yes, but it was overshadowed by a kind of fierce joy in the challenge before them. Tommy worked alongside Zen, teaching the alien how to operate what they called an EMP slingshot, a crude but effective device that could disable Drachnid shields at close range. "The trick is," the boy explained, "they're expecting fancy weapons. But sometimes a rock thrown at the right spot works better than a laser." The colonel gathered everyone for a final briefing as their deadline approached. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Let the Drachnid think they were attacking a helpless target, then spring a series of increasingly unpleasant surprises. "They'll come in cocky," Martins explained, pointing to a hastily drawn map. "Raiders always do. First wave will be light, testing our defenses. That's when we show them nothing. Let them think the ship is abandoned. Second wave will be their boarding parties. That's when we introduce them to good old-fashioned human ingenuity." Maya had stationed her people in key positions throughout the yard. Each group was equipped with what she called homebrew surprises, devices that combined human creativity with salvaged alien tech in ways that even Nexera found unpredictable. The first warning came just as the sun dipped below the horizon. R.A.D's instruments detected the Drachnid ships entering the lower atmosphere, their cloaking systems creating a subtle distortion in the air. "They're trying to be sneaky," Uncle Joe snorted, watching through modified binoculars. "Bless their hearts." Colonel Martinez's voice crackled over the radio network. "All stations, maintain silence. Let them make the first move." Nexera stood with Maya in the Axiom's modified bridge, watching the Drachnid ships through the viewport. The raiders' vessels were dark, predatory shapes against the twilight sky, their hull designs meant to inspire fear. "You know," Maya said quietly, making some final adjustments to their improvised defense grid, "most folks would say we're crazy, taking on alien pirates with junkyard tech and a bunch of gear we built in our garages." "And what do you say?" Nexera asked. Maya's grin was visible even in the growing darkness. "I say those pirates are about to learn something important about humans. We're at our best when someone tells us we can't do something." She checked her watch. 30 seconds. Ready to show them what happens when you combine alien science with human stubbornness. The first Drachnid ship descended toward the scrapyard, its sensors probing for signs of life. They found nothing but what appeared to be an abandoned alien vessel surrounded by primitive human debris, exactly as planned. Nexera's crystalline structure pulsed with anticipation as she watched the raiders approach. For the first time since their emergency landing, she felt genuinely optimistic about their chances. These humans, with their impossible combinations of high and low technology, their fearless creativity, and their obvious joy in solving problems that should have been beyond them, had shown her something remarkable. Sometimes the best defense isn't the most advanced technology, but the most unexpected application of basic principles. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was being unexpected. "Contact in 10 seconds, R.A.D's voice came over the radio, calm and focused. "Everyone remember, let them throw the first punch." Maya's hand hovered over the activation switch for their first surprise. "Then we show them why you don't pick a fight in a junkyard." The night was about to become very interesting indeed. The first Drachnid ship hovered above the scrapyard, its scanning beams cutting through the darkness like violet searchlights. 2 more vessels flanked it, while the remaining 3 maintained high-altitude coverage. Their formation was textbook military precision, which was exactly what Maya's crew had counted on. Initial scan complete. A harsh voice broadcasted in multiple languages. Surrender your vessel and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in immediate destruction. Maya looked at Colonel Martinez, who gave a slight nod. Time for Phase 1. The scrapyard remained silent, dark, seemingly abandoned. The lead Drachnid ship descended further, its boarding ramp extending like a predator's tongue. Armed figures began emerging. Tall, heavily armored shapes with multiple arms wielding energy weapons. They moved with the confidence of experienced raiders who had done this countless times before. Now, Tommy whispered over the radio, barely containing his excitement. Not yet, Martins replied softly. Let them commit. The boarding party reached the Actium's main airlock. Their leader, distinguished by elaborate markings on their armor, stepped forward with a universal cutting tool. That's when Uncle Joe's first surprise activated. The random piles of scrap metal around the boarding party suddenly hummed to life. Electromagnets salvaged from industrial lifting equipment, modified with components from the Actium's own systems. The Drachnid raiders found their armor plating yanked in multiple directions simultaneously. Their weapons, designed to be held by multiple arms, were torn from their grasp. What in the void? The leader started to shout. Now, Martinez ordered. The night erupted into chaos. Tommy's EMP slingshots launched their payloads, taking down the nearest ship's shields with crude but devastating effectiveness. R.A.D's modified radio telescope, rewired to focus electromagnetic energy, sent the raiders' communication systems into spasms of feedback. The Drachnid response was immediate and fierce. Energy weapons lit up the night, but they found few targets. The defenders had taken inspiration from the scrapyard itself. Every shot either hit worthless debris or was deflected by cleverly angled pieces of salvaged hull plating. Second wave incoming. R.A.D called out. They're launching fighter drones. Maya grinned as she activated their next surprise. The seemingly random arrangement of old satellite dishes throughout the yard suddenly aligned, creating a web of focused electromagnetic interference. The drones, reliant on complex guidance systems, began spinning wildly, crashing into each other or falling harmlessly to the ground. They're not used to fighting blind, Colonel Martinez observed, directing the ground teams with hand signals. Keep them disoriented. Inside the Actium's modified bridge, Nexera watched in amazement as human ingenuity turned the tide. The Drachnid, for all their advanced technology, had no answer for the sheer unpredictability of their opponent's tactics. A massive Drachnid gunship descended, charging its main weapon. Before it could fire, Uncle Joe's team activated what he called the Yard Sale Special. Dozens of salvaged car batteries wired in series to create a massive electrical discharge. The blast wasn't powerful enough to damage the ship directly, but it played havoc with their targeting systems. You see, Joe's voice crackled over the radio. Fancy tech's got one big weakness. It expects things to make sense. The battle shifted into close quarters as more Drachnid troops landed. Here, the humans' preparation of the battlefield proved decisive. Every piece of scrap, every pile of debris had been carefully positioned to create killing grounds and channels of movement. The raiders found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. Maya's voice cut through the chaos. "R.A.D, how's our special project?" "Ready, though I still say this is crazy even by our standards." "Perfect. Everyone clear the central yard. Time to show them why you don't mess with Earth tech." At Maya's signal, they activated the Actium's modified thermal management system, but instead of cooling the ship, it now channeled energy from the ship's core through a network of salvaged equipment. The result was something between a Tesla coil and an alien particle weapon, creating an expanding sphere of electrical chaos that swept through the battlefield. The effect on the Drachnid was devastating. Their sophisticated armor, designed to resist energy weapons, found itself overwhelmed by crude electrical discharge. Communication systems failed. Weapon power cells overloaded. "This is impossible." The Drachnid commander's voice boomed across the battlefield. "You're nothing but primitives. Primitives who just kick your ass." Tommy shouted back, launching another EMP round for good measure. The remaining Drachnid ships began to retreat, their formation broken, their confidence shattered. On the ground, their troops were in disarray, their advanced weapons and armor transformed from advantages into liabilities by the humans' unorthodox tactics. Colonel Martinez's voice carried across the yard. "You have 30 seconds to collect your wounded and leave. After that, we see how many more surprises we can come up with." The raiders didn't wait for the full count. Their retreat was hasty, almost panicked. Within minutes, the night sky was clear except for the lingering ozone smell of electrical discharge and the scattered debris of their failed attack. As the adrenaline of battle faded, humans emerged from their positions, checking on each other and surveying the aftermath. Remarkably, there were no serious injuries on their side. The Drachnid had been so focused on dealing with the technological chaos that they'd never managed to mount an effective offensive. Maya found Nexera standing amid the aftermath, her crystalline form reflecting the first hints of dawn. "You know," the human said, "most aliens would have thought we were crazy to fight like this." "Perhaps," Nexera replied, her structure shifting in what Maya had learned was amusement. "But I'm beginning to understand that crazy might be humanity's greatest strength." Around them, the scrapyard was already returning to life. Uncle Joe was examining captured Drachnid technology with gleaming eyes. Raj was furiously documenting everything they'd learned. Tommy was teaching Zen how to make improved versions of the EMP slingshot. The knight's victory had done more than just save the action. It had proven something that both species needed to learn. Sometimes the most effective solution isn't the most advanced one, and wisdom can come from the most unexpected sources. As the sun rose over the scrapyard, casting long shadows through the wreckage of battle, Nexera realized that her mission of studying primitive worlds had yielded results far beyond anything she could have imagined. The humans hadn't just helped repair their ship, they had repaired her people's assumptions about what truly defined advanced civilization. A week after the battle, Chen's universal salvage and repair had transformed yet again. The scrapyard now housed an unlikely combination of human and alien technology, with the Axiom at its center like a crystalline heart. But more than the physical landscape had changed, the invisible barriers between two civilizations had begun to crumble. Maya stood with Nexera, watching as Uncle Joe and Zen collaborated on what they called a hybrid dry system. The ancient mechanic was showing the alien how to integrate simple mechanical backups into complex quantum machinery, while Zen taught Joe the principles behind luminary power distribution. "You know," Maya said, sipping her morning coffee, "when you first crashed here, I thought we were just fixing the ship. Turns out we were building something much bigger." Nexera's crystalline form shifted in patterns that Maya now recognized as deep contemplation. "Indeed, my people have long believed that technological advancement followed a linear path, that simpler solutions were inherently inferior to complex ones. We were incorrect." Around them, the evidence of that revelation was everywhere. Tommy had set up what he called a tech translation workshop, where he helped both species understand each other's engineering principles. His natural ability to bridge the gap between human intuition and alien precision had proven invaluable. Raj emerged from his workstation, where he'd been analyzing data from the battle. "The mathematical implications are fascinating," he announced, his eyes bright with excitement. "The way our primitive solutions created chaos in their advanced systems, it's like we discovered a whole new form of technological counterpoint." Colonel Martinez, who had stayed on as a security advisor, nodded in agreement. Sometimes the best defense isn't a bigger gun, but a completely unexpected approach. The Drachnid never saw us coming because they couldn't imagine primitives being a threat. The aftermath of the battle had brought more than just tactical lessons. The Luminary crew, initially skeptical of human methods, had begun incorporating Earth-style redundancies and mechanical backups into their systems. Meanwhile, The humans were learning to apply their practical knowledge to more advanced technology. "Look at this," Tommy called out, holding up what appeared to be a fusion of human and luminary engineering. "We combined one of our EMP slingshots with their quantum field generators. It's like teaching quantum physics to speak human." Maya walked over to examine the device, noting how seamlessly the two technological philosophies had been merged. "This is what happens when you stop assuming your way is the only way forward." Nexura had been composing her report to the Luminary Science Council, struggling to convey the magnitude of what they'd discovered. "How do I explain?" She mused aloud. "That true advancement isn't about abandoning simpler solutions, but about knowing when to use them." "Tell them about the battle," Maya suggested. "About how a bunch of primitive humans with salvaged tech took down 6 advanced warships." "Perhaps," Nexura replied, her form brightening. "I should tell them about how humans taught us that innovation isn't just about creating new technology. It's about understanding the fundamental principles so well that you can use them in unexpected ways." The action was almost ready for departure, its systems now a unique hybrid of luminary precision and human ingenuity. But the ship wasn't the only thing that had been transformed by the experience. R.A.D had developed new mathematical models that bridged the gap between human and alien engineering principles. Uncle Joe had filled notebooks with designs that combined the best of both worlds. Even Colonel Martinez had begun developing tactical doctrines that incorporated the lessons learned from their unlikely victory. As the final preparations were made, Maya found herself in the ship's bridge with Nexura. The alien scientist was installing what looked like a modified car alternator alongside quantum computational arrays. "You realize," Maya said, "this changes everything. Once your people learn what happened here." "Indeed," Nexura agreed. "The Council will have to reconsider their classification of primitive species, perhaps create new categories that measure innovation and adaptability rather than just technological complexity." Outside, Tommy was teaching a group of luminary engineers how to improvise repairs using limited resources, while Zen demonstrated the principles of quantum field manipulation to fascinated human mechanics. The exchange of knowledge flowed both ways, enriching both cultures. "We're sending some of our people back with you," Maya reminded her, "to help translate between our different approaches to technology." Nexura's form pulsed with what Maya now recognized as joy. "And several of my crew will remain here to continue learning from your unique perspective." The sun was setting on their final day together, casting long shadows across the scrapyard that had become a crucible of transformation. The Axiom stood ready for departure, its hull now bearing marks of both its original elegant design and human modification, a physical representation of the bridge that had been built between two civilizations. "You know what the best part is?" Maya asked, watching the last preparations. "The pirates that attacked you. They're going to spread the word. Soon, everyone out there will know that Earth isn't just some primitive backwater. We're the people who turned scrapyards into battlefields and junk into weapons. More than that," Nexura corrected her. "You're the people who taught an advanced civilization that sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. That true wisdom lies not in complexity, but in understanding." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, both human and alien stood together, watching their people work in harmony. The Axiom would soon return to space, carrying with it more than repaired systems and hybrid technology. It carried the seeds of a new understanding, that advancement comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most primitive solution can be the most elegant. The next morning, as the Axiom prepared for launch, Maya handed Nexura a final gift, an old wrench, worn smooth by decades of use. "Remember," she said with a smile, "sometimes the best tools are the simple ones." Nexura accepted the tool, her crystalline form reflecting the rising sun in rainbow patterns. "And sometimes," she replied, "the most valuable discoveries are not the ones we seek, but the ones that find us when we least expect them." The ship rose into the dawn sky, leaving behind a changed scrapyard and a changed understanding of what it meant to be advanced. In the end, they had fixed more than just a damaged vessel. They had repaired assumptions, bridged galaxies, and proved that innovation knows no boundaries. And somewhere in the vastness of space, a group of pirates was spreading a new warning. Earth might look primitive, but its people had mastered something more powerful than advanced technology: the ability to turn imagination into reality and junk into victory.